And I've auditioned for a lot and haven't got a lot. And then Gran Torino came around where he was talking to me. It was like this little role.
Born in the shadows of stardom, one would think Scott Eastwood had life served on a platter of gold. But reality was far different. Being the son of one of Hollywood's most talented and charismatic actors didn't automatically open doors. Rejection after rejection, opportunity after opportunity slipping away, Scott faced a brutal truth. Fame by bloodline wasn't enough. With countless setbacks testing his resolve, would he give up on acting and chase another path instead? Join us as we explore some of the most tragic details about Clint Eastwood's son, the harsh reality. Scott Eastwood's journey in Hollywood has been anything but smooth. As the son of an influential actor, it's believed that gaining recognition should not be so hard. However, there was no soft landing for him. Scott auditioned countless times and faced rejection after rejection, even for small roles. Even when his father directed American Sniper, Scott didn't get the call. While his father earned Academy Awards and walked the red carpet as Hollywood royalty, Scott was making ends meet in much humbler ways. He parked cars, served drinks, and worked behind the bar. In fact, he often earned more money bartending than acting. By the age of 35, Hollywood had worn him down so much that he seriously considered leaving it all behind and becoming a firefighter. But his struggles weren't just about career setbacks. They also involved complicated family dynamics that few knew about. Scott was born on March 21, 1986 in Monterey, California. His arrival didn't make headlines. In fact, his birth wasn't even openly acknowledged by his father, Clint Eastwood, who was already a massive star at the time. Clint was busy directing and acting in hits like Pale Rider, and the world saw him as a confident, successful figure. Meanwhile, Scott was quietly entering the world in the midst of a personal scandal. Scott's mother, Jocelyn Reeves, worked as a flight attendant. She had met Clint during one of his trips in the mid-1980s, and what followed was a secret relationship that lasted at least 3 years. So, it is not so shocking that Scott's early life was kept a secret. He grew up mostly out of the public eye, a child of a famous father who wasn't openly involved in his upbringing. Despite these challenges, Scott worked hard to carve out his own path. He didn't rely on his father's fame to open doors. He faced the same grueling auditions, the same heartbreaks, and the same long periods without work that many aspiring actors do. His determination eventually paid off, but the road was never smooth. The Hollywood lifestyle he once dreamed of felt distant, and the pressures of living in the shadow of one of cinema's greatest stars were immense. Standing up to his father was another turning point in Scott's life. How did his event help shape his life? Eastwood in name, not in favor. At the time Scott was born, his dad was publicly involved with another woman, actress Sandra Locke. Locke had no idea that Clint was living a double life. She believed their relationship was exclusive, only learning about Scott and his younger sister Catherine years later during a bitter legal battle. To keep the affair hidden, Scott's birth certificate didn't even carry the Eastwood name. He was listed as Scott Clinton Reeves. Catherine was born in 1988, and by then the secret had grown too large to remain completely hidden. Yet Clint never publicly acknowledged the children, nor did he raise them. Scott spent his earliest years in the quiet town of Carmel by the Sea, a picturesque place where his father had once served as mayor. Despite the Eastwood name and fame, Scott didn't grow up in a celebrity lifestyle. While Clint was earning millions for his films, Scott's childhood was modest and ordinary. The contrast between his father's glamorous life and his simple upbringing was stark, but it offered him a sense of normalcy that few children in Hollywood ever knew. When Scott was 10, his mother, Jocelyn Reeves, decided to move him and Catherine to Hawaii. This was a deliberate effort to put thousands of miles between Scott and the bright, relentless spotlight of Hollywood. In Hawaii, Scott lived in modest surroundings, going to regular schools and blending in with his classmates. None of them knew he was the son of one of the most famous actors and directors in the world. This anonymity gave Scott a rare chance to experience a childhood without constant attention or expectations, even if it was far removed from the Hollywood lifestyle he would later try to enter. Growing up in Hawaii, Scott learned early on how to adapt, how to work quietly toward his goals, and how to navigate life without relying on his father's fame. The secrecy surrounding his birth and his early years gave him a unique perspective on life. He saw firsthand the difference between public image and private reality. While Clint Eastwood was a global icon, Scott was just a kid trying to grow up in peace, learning lessons about patience and self-reliance. These early experiences shaped Scott's approach to Hollywood. Unlike some celebrity children who were handed opportunities, he had to work hard to prove himself. He faced auditions, rejections, and the constant challenge of stepping out of his father's immense shadow. But the grounding and perspective he gained in his early years, growing up away from the cameras, in modest homes, and among classmates who treated him like any other kid, gave him the strength to endure setbacks and pursue his own path in acting. Why did Scott choose the entertainment industry instead of pursuing his earlier passion? The humble footsteps of an actor. Clint Eastwood built a name as one of Hollywood's most powerful actors and directors. His career brought him worldwide fame, blockbuster films, and a fortune that allowed him to buy new properties and live a life of luxury. But while Clint was building his empire, his son Scott was living a very different reality. Instead of growing up with the comforts many might expect from a movie legend's child, Scott had to make his own way, often struggling just to get by. Scott's mother, Jocelyn, worked as a flight attendant, and it was mainly her salary that supported him in his early years. As a teenager, Scott worked construction jobs to earn money. He also waited tables at local restaurants, proving early on that he wasn't afraid of hard work. Unlike many celebrity kids who live off trust funds, Scott didn't have that privilege. When it was time for college, he enrolled at Loyola Marymount University, but there was no big check from Clint covering his tuition. Scott paid his own way. Even while studying communications, Scott followed his passion for acting. He signed up for acting classes, went to auditions, and took on small parts whenever he could. What made his journey even more unique was that he refused to use his father's famous last name. Instead, he stuck with his birth name, Scott Reeves. He didn't want any special treatment or favors. He wanted to prove himself on his own talent. But proving himself wasn't easy. Hollywood is already a tough place to break into, and Scott soon learned that even having a father like Clint didn't guarantee success. In fact, it almost worked against him. He later revealed that he auditioned for nearly every film his father directed. Time and time again, he was rejected. Clint never stepped in to offer help, not even when Scott begged for a single shot. One of the hardest blows came with American Sniper, Clint's 2014 war drama. The film went on to gross more than $547 million at the box office and earned 6 Academy Award nominations. Scott auditioned for the movie, hoping it would finally be his big break. But once again, Clint didn't give him a role. For Scott, it was heartbreaking. Clint's philosophy was clear: no handouts, no shortcuts. He believed that success only mattered if you earned it yourself. While some might admire that stance, for Scott, it meant years of rejection and disappointment. As his father collected Oscars and critical praise, Scott was left working in low-budget films that few people saw. To keep money coming in, he parked cars, worked odd jobs, and even helped build houses. His early roles were so small that most audiences didn't even notice him. The path wasn't easy, but Scott's struggles shaped his character. Did he eventually break through the constant rejection? Rising through fire and silver screens. In 2006, he landed a very small role in Flags of Our Fathers, a film directed by Clint himself. In the movie, Scott appeared briefly as Private Roberto Lunsford. At that time, he wasn't credited as Scott Eastwood, but as Scott Reeves, using his mother's last name. His choice was intentional. He didn't want people to assume he got roles just because of his father. Instead, he wanted to earn recognition on his own. But this decision came with a price. By hiding his real identity, he also missed out on the attention and opportunities that came with being Clint Eastwood's son. He didn't get the headlines or momentum that could have pushed his career forward. Instead, his name was buried in the credits, and his career seemed stuck. During those years, Scott worked in smaller films like Pride and Player 5150. These projects didn't do much for his career. Some were low-budget independent films that barely reached theaters, while others went straight to DVD without gaining much notice. No matter how hard he worked, it felt like he was in a professional no man's land. He was an actor with big dreams, but he lacked the boost of recognition. Hollywood can be harsh, and for Scott, the climb was especially steep. His personal life wasn't simple either. Clint Eastwood's family was famously complicated. Over the years, Clint fathered 8 children with 6 different women. Scott was one of those children, born in 1986 to Jocelyn Reeves, a flight attendant. Growing up, Scott's family situation wasn't like the typical Hollywood story of constant luxury. Instead, his childhood was more modest compared to some of his half-siblings. The Eastwood family tree is wide and tangled. Scott's half-siblings included Lori, born in 1954 and put up for adoption, and Kimber, born in 1964 to stuntwoman Roxanne Tunis. During Clint's long marriage to Maggie Johnson, he had 2 more children, Kyle and Allison. Later came Francesca, born in 1993 to actress Frances Fisher, and Morgan, born in 1996 to television news anchor Dina Ruiz. Each child had a different background and upbringing. Some grew up surrounded by wealth and Hollywood privilege, while others, like Scott and his sister Catherine, lived a simpler life. This made Scott's journey even harder. While some of his half-siblings had more access to comfort or the spotlight, he had to carve out his own path. In fact, some of Clint's children didn't even meet each other until they were adults. The Eastwood clan wasn't one big, close-knit family, but more like puzzle pieces scattered across different places and different lives. For Scott, all of this built a strong determination. He wanted to prove himself without relying on his famous last name, but the cost was years of small roles, overlooked films, and the feeling of being invisible in an industry where fame often comes easier if you have a well-known last name. When was his big break? Forging a legacy of his own. Scott Eastwood's path to Hollywood recognition began shifting in the early 2010s. At that time, he was still using the name Scott Reeves. In 2011, he appeared in Texas Chainsaw 3D, filmed in Shreveport, Louisiana. He had never even watched the original 1974 classic, only the Jessica Biel remake, but he stepped into one of horror's most iconic franchises. It was a step forward, but the real turning point came a few years later. In 2014, Scott landed a breakthrough role in Fury, a gritty World War II drama starring Brad Pitt. This wasn't a background part. He played Sergeant Miles, the newest member of a battle-hardened tank crew. The film demanded months of military training and even required Scott to operate real Sherman tanks from the 1940s. The work was physical and emotional, but it paid off. The cast won the National Board of Review's Best Ensemble Award, and for the first time, critics began calling Scott more than just Clint Eastwood's son. Then, in 2015, he showed a different side of himself in The Longest Ride, a Nicholas Sparks romance. He played a bull rider who falls in love, even performing his own dangerous stunts. That role earned him a Teen Choice nomination for Breakout Star, proving he could shine in leading roles. Just when people thought they had him figured out, he surprised everyone by appearing as Taylor Swift's love interest in her cinematic music video, Wildest Dreams. Some warned him the steamy performance might hurt his credibility, but the video became a global hit, raising his profile even higher. But behind the rising career, Scott was carrying a devastating secret. In 2014, the same year Fury came out, his girlfriend, Jewel Brangman, died in a tragic car accident. She was just 26 years old. What should have been a minor crash turned deadly when the airbag in her Honda Civic exploded. The faulty device, made by Takata, sent shrapnel through her neck, killing her instantly. That same defect later sparked the largest automotive recall in U.S. history, but for Jewel and her father, Alexander, it was too late. Scott was shattered. He admitted later that he had never lost someone he loved that deeply, and the grief changed him. He carried not only heartbreak, but also guilt. He stayed silent for nearly 3 years, never even reaching out to Jules' father, something he admitted with regret in a 2017 interview. His pain was not only about losing her, it was about the shame of not knowing how to face her family. Amid this darkness, Scott found strength in something Paul Walker had introduced him to years earlier: Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Paul wasn't just a co-star in the Fast and Furious world. He was a friend and mentor who brought Scott into the discipline around 2007. For Scott, training became more than fitness. It was therapy, a way to process grief, anger, and fear. On the mat, his last name didn't matter. Fame couldn't protect him from being choked out or tested. Jiu-Jitsu stripped away ego and gave him discipline. After Jules' death, it became a lifeline, helping him survive the emotional weight he carried. In a way, Paul Walker saved Scott twice. Once by introducing him to the sport, and again by giving him the tools to endure heartbreak. Every time Scott trained, he honored both his late friend and the woman he lost. After a series of trauma and tragedy, fate finally smiled upon Scott. How did this happen? At the end of the tunnel, Scott Eastwood had spent years proving he wasn't just Clint Eastwood's son, but 2017 became a true turning point. That year, he entered one of the most successful franchises in cinema history, The Fast and the Furious. Cast as a sharp-suited government agent known as Little Nobody, Eastwood stepped into a role created partly to fill the void left by Paul Walker's passing. Instead of imitating Walker, he brought his own energy. His character clashed with the crew, but slowly earned their respect, embodying honor and a love of fast cars. With the franchise already a global juggernaut earning over $6 billion, the role gave Eastwood immediate worldwide visibility and placed him alongside stars like Vin Diesel, Dwayne Johnson, and Charlize Theron. The momentum carried into 2018 with Pacific Rim Uprising. Inheriting the legacy of Guillermo del Toro's original, Eastwood co-led the sci-fi spectacle with John Boyega. It was a true blockbuster test. Giant robots, massive monsters, and heavy CGI effects demanded both physical stamina and emotional grounding. While reviews were mixed, the film pulled in nearly $300 million worldwide, proving Eastwood could stand tall in a tentpole project. He didn't crack under the weight of a global franchise. Instead, he proved he could anchor one. Then, in 2019, he surprised critics with a very different kind of film. The Outpost traded flashy CGI and fast cars for raw, visceral realism. Based on true events, it told the story of U.S. soldiers trapped in one of Afghanistan's deadliest battles. Eastwood played a young soldier in the chaos, stripped of Hollywood polish. The performance was gritty, emotional, and authentic. Veterans praised the film for capturing the fear and brotherhood of combat, and critics responded with glowing reviews. The Outpost earned a 93% on Rotten Tomatoes. For many, it was the moment Scott Eastwood showed he wasn't just an action star, but a capable dramatic actor. Critic even noted his delivery in a key line, "No, not today," sounding uncannily like a young Clint. After proving his range, Eastwood circled back to the blockbuster world. In 2023, he reappeared in Fast X. Absent from F9, fans were eager to see Little Nobody return, and this time, his character took on an even greater role, with Mr. Nobody gone. The cast included heavyweights like Jason Momoa and Brie Larson, but Eastwood held his own. The film hinted at larger storylines for his character in future installments, cementing his place in the ever-evolving saga. By 2025, Eastwood took another bold leap, this time alongside a Hollywood legend. In Alarm, directed by Michael Polish and released by Lionsgate, he shared the screen with Sylvester Stallone. The film told the story of two ex-spies forced back into danger after a plane crash and the discovery of a mysterious hard drive. At 95 minutes, it was a tight, relentless action thriller. Stallone brought the grit, while Eastwood delivered the fire, showing he could go toe-to-toe with one of the genre's most iconic names. From Fast and Furious to indie war dramas, from CGI blockbusters to sharing the screen with Stallone, Scott Eastwood's journey proves he's more than a legacy kid. He has built his own identity, balancing action, drama, and authenticity, while carving a career that reflects both his resilience and his range. Scott did not allow the rough hand he was dealt to affect his relationship with his father. He even supported his dad during one of his darkest moments. When was this? Someone to lean on. Clint Eastwood has been quietly navigating life after the loss of his longtime partner, Christina Sandera, who passed away in July at the age of 61 following a heart attack. Now in his mid-90s, the legendary actor and director has faced this personal chapter with the same endurance that has defined much of his life. But this time, his son was present to support him. 6 months on, those closest to him described him as resilient and steady, continuing forward despite the grief. His son, Scott Eastwood, has spoken of his father's remarkable strength, describing him as someone who embodies perseverance. According to Scott, this determination runs deep in their family, rooted in Clint's own upbringing during the Great Depression and his early years shaped by the impact of World War II. Those experiences instilled in him an understanding that life is filled with struggle, but survival depends on refusing to give in to self-pity or complaint. Sandera had been a constant presence in Clint's life for more than a decade. The two reportedly met at the Mission Ranch Hotel and Restaurant in Carmel by the Sea, California, an establishment owned by Eastwood, where Sandera worked as a hostess. Unlike many of Clint's past partners, she did not belong to the entertainment world, preferring a quieter, more private life. Their relationship remained relatively low profile, though the pair were occasionally seen together at major events such as the Academy Awards and Cannes Film Festival. As a longtime resident of Carmel, she shared a connection to the community where Clint once served as mayor in the 1980s. When Sandera passed away, Eastwood acknowledged the depth of his loss in a rare public statement, remembering her as a caring and kind woman. Despite the personal pain, he has continued to keep moving, reflecting the same stoic philosophy that has guided him through many phases of his life and career. Scott, who has established himself in Hollywood over the past decade, often credits his father for inspiring him to enter the film industry. He has explained that choosing acting felt natural, much like a child following a parent's trade. Now, the once tumultuous relationship between Scott and his dad had transpired into something positively stronger. Was Clint's refusal to help his son climb the career ladder his own way of instilling perseverance and resilience in his son? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.